Welcome to another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. You're listening to a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State, featuring writer, poet, and musician Rick Pidcock. Now here's Rick.
Earlier today, Donald Trump shared a post on Truth Social calling for Democratic members of Congress to be hanged. He also posted a message that said, seditious behavior, punishable by death. Let's be crystal clear. The President of the United States is calling for the execution of elected officials. This is an outright threat, and it's deadly serious. We have already seen what happens when Donald Trump tells his followers that his political opponents are enemies of the state. Every time Donald Trump posts things like this, he makes political violence more likely. None of us should tolerate this kind of behavior. We all remember what January 6th was like. We lived through January 6th. We have lived through the assassination and attempted assassinations this year. We have members whose families have had to flee their homes. When Donald Trump uses the language of execution and treason, some of his supporters may very well listen. He is lighting a match in a country soaked with political gasoline. Who would have thought the President of the United States saying his opponents should be hanged?
Wait, what? The President of the United States called for members of Congress to be hanged? What on earth happened, and how did we get here? It all started when a group of congressmen and women who had military experience came together to post this video.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
Who take risks each day
To keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
you must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard.
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army.
Our Navy,
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
And with that, President Trump had a conniption fit. He went on the so-called Truth Social and posted, quote, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand." And then in all caps, "Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up. President DJT." Then when somebody replied to the Washington Examiner by saying, "Hang them, George Washington would," Trump reposted it. So here's what some of the members of Congress who were in the video had to say in response.
Congressman Chris DeLuzio here. Today, Donald Trump called for my death. Called for the arrest and the death of me and several of my colleagues, all who've either worn the uniform or served intelligence services. He didn't want to hear a basic lesson that we know about our Constitution, about the oath we all take when we serve, whether in Congress or your first day out of boot camp. These are bedrock principles in our country, that you follow lawful orders, that the oath to the Constitution, the loyalty to the Constitution comes above all. I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not going to be deterred from my duty to represent the people who sent me to Congress and to uphold my oath to the Constitution. Don't give up the ship.
This morning, President Donald Trump threatened to have me arrested and executed simply for reminding our service members of their oaths to follow the Constitution and to defend the rule of law. I've taken many oaths throughout my life, as a combat veteran, a paratrooper, an Army Ranger, and now as a member of Congress. That is a lifetime oath for me. I will never stop defending it and upholding that sacred obligation. It's very telling that President Trump and those around him think it's criminal simply for asking people to follow the law. This moment requires moral clarity. Every American, regardless of your background, should unite and reject his calls for political violence. This is a moment that requires leadership. I intend to uphold my obligation, my oath, and to lead. Don't give up the ship.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin, Senator from Michigan, former CIA officer. Earlier today, President Trump threatened myself and a number of other service and veteran lawmakers with arrest, trial, and death because he didn't agree with a video we put out this week. This really isn't about those of us who made the video. This is about who we are as Americans and how we're going to engage with people who we disagree with. I would hope that people of all backgrounds, Democrat, Republican, Independent, would agree that threatening death for people you disagree with is beyond the pale of who we are as Americans. I love this country. It has given me everything, everything. And I refuse to believe that this is the new normal. I refuse to believe that we're going to use fear and intimidation against people we disagree with. And I'm not going to be forced away from speaking up on behalf of my country. I swore an oath to the Constitution many times, most recently less than a year ago as a senator. To the Constitution, not to any one man, not to any one president. And I abide by that oath. For me, I believe in the power of this country and that we are better than our current politics represent. And I refuse to be intimidated out of defending the country I love.
What the president said is very serious. I didn't think he would step over that line, calling for the execution of members of Congress. And his words carry tremendous weight, more so than anybody else in the country, and he should be aware of that. And because of what he says, there is now an increased threats against us. I'm not going to get into, details on my personal security, but as the husband of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, I understand what political violence is. The president should as well. Just like Gabby, somebody tried to assassinate him, and he should understand that his words could have serious, serious consequences.
And I remember just weeks ago hearing from the president and other Republicans about the need to dial back the rhetoric after the tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk. When it comes to
what happened to that? That was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Where are they now? We've heard very little, basically crickets from Republicans in the United States Congress about what the president has said about hanging members of Congress.
Know this about me. Threats don't deter me. I will never give up the ship. I love our country and I love our Constitution. That's why I've sworn an oath to protect and defend it many times throughout my life, as an intelligence officer in the United States Navy Reserve, and today as New Hampshire's Congresswoman. In America today, our service members need to know that we've got their back as they honor that sacred oath and as they uphold the basic obligation under federal law to follow lawful orders and lawful orders only. It is sad, telling, and downright dangerous that simply stating what our law says caused the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, to threaten violence against me today. That's not who we are as Americans. Our history teaches us that both fear and courage can be contagious. So know this, threats do not deter me. I will never give up the ship.
When all of this first started coming out, I posted on social media, "Hey, white evangelicals, are you okay with the president calling for senators to be hung? Or is this finally the step too far for you?" Then some of you responded. Matt said, "If they are truly pro-life, they should be outraged, not holding my breath." Jonathan posted a meme of a skeleton sitting on a park bench and said, "Me waiting on white evangelicals to draw a line in the sand with Trump." Alyssa Vett added, "Of course they're okay with it. I mean, Charlie Kirk was literally saying Coca-Cola should sponsor live executions and kids should watch it. But Christians act like he was some spiritual martyr. We actually covered that Charlie Kirk story in episode 57. A lot of conservatives respond to that claim by asking for proof. So I provided the audio in that episode, and their response to hearing the audio tends to be silence. Also, on a side note, the amount of comments I receive each week on social media about these posts is kind of a lot. Just on this topic alone, I received 266 comments with 937 shares on one post, and 444 comments with 769 shares on another. So I appreciate everyone's interest in engaging the content, and I'd like to start incorporating more feedback from readers and listeners into this podcast. But there's no way I can do much justice to the amount of comments that come in. So I've started doing a 1-hour live show on Fridays on my personal Facebook page. My hope is that it'll provide an opportunity to interact more extensively with readers and listeners about the topics we've discussed during the week. I probably won't be doing one this week due to Thanksgiving holidays and being home with 5 kids running all over the place, but I'd love to send the people who are interacting there to listen here and vice versa. But in addition to what the Democrats are saying and what readers and listeners of this podcast are saying, what are the Republicans saying? Here's Speaker Johnson's response.
Speaker, how you doing? The president posted that Democrats who urge service members to not follow illegal orders should be punished. It should be seditious, conspiracy, and punishable by death. Give me a response to that.
Look, I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history. And as the father of a young man who is, at the Naval Academy, going to be joining the service, I know young soldiers, airmen, sailors, they don't need that kind of nonsense from people in Congress. It is very dangerous.
But punishable by death.
I'm going to let others define what it is, but it's wildly inappropriate.
And of course, we can't forget Carolyn Leavitt's classic response.
Well, if the president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence, isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually,
every single
you can refuse an illegal order, which is
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not.
She's just completely lying. They never said not to follow lawful orders. They said not to follow unlawful orders. And given how Trump is wielding the military against U.S. citizens, it's probably worth reminding them about. At one point, Trump seemed to walk back his threats by saying he wasn't threatening death, but that, quote, they're in serious trouble. Then while most people on the East Coast were getting ready for bed Saturday evening, Trump logged on to Truth Social to add this. And all of this is in all caps. Quote, the traitors that told the military to disobey my orders should be in jail right now, not roaming the fake news networks trying to explain that what they said was okay. It wasn't, and never will be. It was sedition at the highest level, and sedition is a major crime. There can be no other interpretation of what they said. He added another post that they were traitorous communists and posted a screenshot of someone calling the Democratic Party a domestic terrorist party. This is a line we've heard multiple times since the Charlie Kirk assassination. When I looked at the comments section of one of my local news stations, I knew there would likely be a person here or there defending Trump's threats, but I was caught off guard by how many people were calling for the death penalty. These are neighbors, people that are in the city that I live in. I go to the grocery store with them. I go to my kids' school events with them. And on social media, they're revealing that they're in favor of the death penalty for these Democratic lawmakers. So why are so many conservatives, many of whom identify as Christian, so willing to embrace the idea of justice as retribution with the penalty being violent death? I think a lot of it goes back to their theology. On a number of fronts. One, there is this expectation of perfection. God is perfect, and God created a perfect universe, and God gave a perfect law, and God expects us to be perfect. And because we're not, therefore God has to have a perfect punishment and a perfect savior in our place that lived the perfect life we could never live. And it's all revealed in a perfectly inerrant Bible. There's so much assumption there that everything has to be absolutely perfect. And then when you start to point out some of the issues at play, it doesn't really matter. Like, okay, there's genocide in the Bible. There's literally the taking and plundering of virgins, and not just like the wives of the men that you killed, but the sexually attractive wives and the virgins, and you're taking them as booty. And you start to point some of this stuff out, and their answer mirrors what Carolyn Leavitt said of Trump. They'll say nothing God commands is unlawful. Same thing with Carolyn Leavitt. Nothing Trump commands is unlawful, because it all depends on who the lawgiver is. The president supposedly has the right over the executive government to declare whatever he wants to do, and that's lawful. And God gets to command genocide and all of this taking and plundering of virgins and all the violence that we see, and it doesn't matter because there's nothing for us to wrestle with there. There's nothing for us to question or doubt, because it's all dependent on who the lawgiver is, God, the perfect lawgiver. And so with all of that, there becomes the wages of sin, which they define as the penalty or the punishment. You know, the consequence of not being perfect is punishment. And it's a punishment not just of like a slap on the wrist or a timeout. It's a punishment of death. And it's not just any death. It's an eternal death of violence, of swimming in this volcano of sulfur and brimstone and fire, and worms are crawling in and out of your eye sockets and your body. And it's like the most gruesome thing you can imagine. Nonstop, never getting any kind of rest, never getting any kind of reprieve. And it's either that or it's crucifixion for Jesus in your place. And all of that is the making of things right. The crucifying of Jesus is making things right. The burning of the non-evangelical is making things right. And when you have that violent retribution approach to justice, there is no nuance. It doesn't matter if you offend in one point, you're guilty of all. If you steal a candy bar, you're the same thing as Hitler. If you fight with your brother or sister, you're the same thing as Stalin. Of course, they'll say, well, there are degrees of punishment in hell. But, I mean, when you're talking about hell as this eternal conscious torment theology, where people are burning, like, what kind of comfort is that? Once you're thirsty and burning and have worms crawling in and out of you at 500 degrees, is that really that much better than at 1,000 degrees? Or 2,000 degrees? Like, at some point in eternity of that, experiencing that, the degrees erase themselves. It's a concept of reality that makes zero sense. It's a concept of reality where you have to disconnect from your own humanity in order to embrace this. Because there's no way you can hold on to your own healthy humanity, your own love of neighbor as self, and be any kind of a functionally healthy human when you think your child might end up that way, or your sibling, or your parent, or your cousin, or someone that you care about, a friend, a partner. There's no way you can live with yourself knowing that. But for white evangelicals, you not only have to live with that, you have to celebrate it. That this is when your tears are wiped away. This is when all things are made new to you. And so their songs are songs of justice, where the justice is crucifixion or a justice of Armageddon, of eternal conscious torment, and they shape you to respond to that view of justice with celebration. So with all of that theology in the background, you come to the situation with Trump, and it makes perfect sense that they would say, yeah, whatever Trump says is lawful. He's the lawgiver. And yeah, these Democratic senators, the punishment, the wages of sin is death. And of course, it's got to be a violent death of hanging. all of that has been existing within white evangelical theology for centuries. Their entire lives, everyone who has been in white evangelicalism, who has grown up in this or who came into it later, their entire white evangelical narrative has been shaping them to, of course, accept this view that Trump would put forth. The only reason any white evangelical would really have to question it is if there's still something there where they have a seed of humanity that they're in touch with. And so I think one of the things we need to do to dismantle this highest power of Trump, where he's literally threatening to hang senators, I think one of the things we need to do is not get into these huge debates about the Constitution and about what somebody meant by the difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order. Like, all of that's important, but at some point we have to deal with the fact that white evangelicals have been primed to accept this fundamental script of reality and justice, and they've been primed to celebrate it. And the only real hope there is, I think, in them walking away from it is for them to walk toward their humanity and to walk toward love. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do on this podcast. It's one of the things that I try to do in every one of the articles that I write, is to help us recognize how we have been shaped by theology to promote the harm in the hierarchy that is hurting those we love. I appreciate everyone listening. I would normally at this point say that we are going to be back with another episode on Thursday, but Thursday is Thanksgiving, so we're actually going to release a shorter episode on Friday. So whatever you have going on this week, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving.
This has been another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. The episode you've just heard is part of a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State. Be sure to follow BNG daily at baptistnews.com and subscribe to get notifications about future episodes. Baptist News Global is a national nonprofit news service that is independent, free, and faithful. BNG is supported by readers and listeners like you. Learn more at baptistnews.com.
This episode was produced and edited by Mac Bowles of TKG Communications, LLC, Dallas, Texas.